Hey, Sludgy y'all. Welcome to another Tuesday night on Scotch in the Bayou. I'm Leanne, and I'm ready to talk about some triple distilled whiskey. And we'll talk about some Irish, but we'll talk about some other types of whiskey that have seen their time go three times through a still. So I think it'd be a fun topic, especially coming in up on the big holiday this weekend of St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, and if you kind of detect a little something going on, I'm a little under the weather, but I didn't want to cancel tonight. So bear with me, and someone's going to have a dram for me because I'm actually not going to be drinking tonight, which is kind of a bummer because some of these are really wanted to crack open, but we'll get there eventually. All good things. Got to take care of your health first, right? Just want to say hey to everybody. Donner Pass, hey friend, that Shayla's not here. If y'all missed it last week, Shayla's in the last one for sure. But we had a blast. Yeah, so totally impromptu, like had no clue. Last week, Kevin was on and we had those incredible vintage uh drams through the decades. They were just amazing. I called them the herd of unicorns. And the next day, because people's schedules kind of changed and I wasn't quite sure if it was going to work out, but I was really thrilled that Shayla and her husband Bernie came over and we had dinner and had some drams. And we were thinking, let's do a live show. So apologies for no notice, but it literally was, hey, let's go do this. And we had a blast. And again, 2 hours later, I think everybody slept well that night for sure. But yeah, it was so good to see her. I know so many in the community have followed her story and the things that, had happened to them down in Mexico, and just, really great that they're here and they're doing what they want to do. They're traveling across the US, and I was so excited that they got to stop by and see us and visit. So check that replay out. But yeah, so this week we'll be talking more about triple distilled whiskeys, and again, not just Irish, though they do have the corner on it, right? Looking out, who else is here? Hey, Andrew, good morning. And yes, I'm so glad that we could start our daylight savings time before you all did, so you get an extra hour on us for a couple of weeks for sure. I don't think y'all changed to the end of the month, is what you said before. And Peter's here. Hey, Pete, good seeing you, friend. Thanks for being here, Mike. Cheers and Slanja and all of that. Rob's in too. Awesome. Hello, hello, hello. And Meow to Sugar Kitty is in as well. Hey, friend. Good to see you. Trooper, are you on actual back home cutting grass? You're not in the Gulf. Yay. It was an absolutely gorgeous day. I think Mark even did I know he did a lot of work in the front yard, because y'all, we're already growing down here. Mark's had to cut the grass more than a couple of times, and just kind of doing the winter cleanup and the weed eating and all that fun stuff. Our azaleas are blooming like mad. I was really worried because a lot of them were damaged. We actually lost a lot of them in the back of the yard from the drought last year. And just this week, they just exploded. I don't know, Trooper, if it's the same with you down in your neck of the woods, but they're absolutely glorious. So I'm going to put some posts out on Instagram this week so you can see some bottles with some flowers. That's always nice, right? Absolutely love it. So glad you're here, Trooper. Yeah, and hey, time for a dram. I'm so super stoked. You're going to be celebrating your St. Patrick's Day with the band I saw this past weekend in Chicago, the Snuts, those West Lothian boys. They were so very, very good. I hope they're at full speed and feeling better by the time they get to you. Loving their new album for sure. Thanks, Gregor, for being here. I appreciate it. Yeah, because that's a way too late watching Shayla. We just had the best time though. It was a lot of fun, to be able to visit. First time we'd met in real life, of course. And she is exactly as you would think she is. She's just effervescent and bubbly and happy and just a really great positive vibe. You know, you can be around some folks and you this exchange of energy that you get and that you try to give. Shayla is just, I would say she's full of it in all kinds of ways, in the best ways. And no, she's truly, she's a gem for sure. Absolutely. Um, yeah, Mike Hot Toddy, I might think about that, but I think, I think after that Tuesday, after the Wednesday with Shayla, and then I took about 8 sample bottles on that Amtrak train and introduced Scotch to my bourbonite friend. So and plus the next night, I'm good for a little bit. I think I'm okay to lay off for tonight for sure. Yes, okay, y'all. We have to gush here a little bit about this. I'm so happy that you have blossoms too. We had zero fruit on our Satsuma tree. If you go back and look at the Open Distillers Edition camp dram I did, you'll see a tree in my backyard filled with fruit. And we got zero last year. And this year, same trooper. We are just, it is chock full of blossoms, and the smell will just about knock you down. It's absolutely wonderful. So I'm so glad. Now my lemon tree is, it looks like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree right now. So I'm a little worried we're gonna have to kind of whack that back and it may not get any fruit this year. So, but yeah, I feel you. I feel you. So hey Peter, what you're working on McAloney's distillery in Canada does a triple distill. That's interesting. First, I didn't know that that was a distillery and Canadian at that. So very cool. Is it a malt that they're doing? Triple distilled? I'll have to write that one. Go back and write that down. And Rob is starting with the Hazelburn 10. And funny enough, I have one of those here too. um, yeah. And as much as I want to crack this open and drink it, I'm not going to. I'm going to be good about it for sure. Um, but yeah, so getting into what those things are, what with St. Patrick's Day coming up, I was kind of looking like, what do I want to do for a show? And I've had Stacy on from Four Leaf Whiskey, which please, I mean, this is her heyday. This is her Christmas. This is Four Leaf Whiskey is all about. I mean, she's dropping all kinds of knowledge left and right about Irish whiskeys this week for sure. So make sure you check her out, support her channel, subscribe. But we think about the triple distilled a lot about Irish whiskey. And I've done Irish whiskey the last 2 shows. So I was like, I want to do something a little different in the fact that there are some triple distilled Scotch whiskeys, but there are some triple distilled other whiskeys, not just Scotch. So I just kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit more. Definitely need some participation out of the chat here on what y'all have had, what you've experienced, because I haven't had that many of them, but I really do enjoy them. I enjoy Irish whiskey. I feel is it's a sneaky whiskey. And I take that on the triple distillation part of it. For me, it's just it kind of creeps up, and before you know it, it's you're drinking that, not just having a drink or a sip. It goes down really easy and fast. So yeah, so that's something to think about. Before we get into the scotches though, um American whiskeys. I was surprised to see, and I don't know if it's this particular one. Um, I mean, it seems to be, but of course, this bottle's not going to have anything on it. Um, but Woodford Reserve Distiller Select, I've read, is triple distilled, which is interesting. So this is about all I have of this bottle left. Um, this one's at 45 too, but nothing on the bottle says that. It's just things that I've read say that it's triple distilled. Um, so yeah, I don't know if there's um, any other American whiskeys that are primarily triple distilled, like some of the um, well, a couple of the major name brand folks uh, in the Scotch world are, and of course, there's one that's 2.78, which if you round up, that's triple. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Um, yeah, very cool. Okay, so this one I love this star. So I have to put this on so I can read it. So the Macalonis does a single malt, was sued by the SWA, lovely, as well for their name. Oh, considered it was one of the big three craft distilleries in Canada with Shelter Point. Now, Shelter Point and Two Brewers I knew about, but that one I didn't. So interesting. And I mean, there are Scottish heritage folks not in Scotland that, like, you know, that are in the US. I mean, all the Carolinas and Georgia and Virginia's, that was all settled by Scotch Irish folk with names like Macalonis and Mictors and all kinds of other names from that heritage. I don't think people are trying to pawn their stuff off as Scotch. So I think the SWA has thrown some of those little lawsuits around, and they've not won them all. That's for sure. Yes, Sugar Kitty, absolutely. And I've actually had that one, the Talnua. Yes, that is a really big one out of Colorado. Um, Really tasty American whiskey that's triple distilled. Absolutely. Hey, hey, Jim, good to see you. I'm glad you enjoyed the samples. So, to divert from the subject for a moment, um, it was a really big whiskey week last week. Starting on Sunday, we met Jim, who's from Indiana. Met him in New Orleans. Did the Sazerac House tour. Had some dinner and got to visit with him. And then Monday, prepping for Tuesday show. Shayla's here on Wednesday. Thursday, had to pack. Friday, I get on a train with my bestie, and we hit to Chicago. Get there at 7:30 in the morning. 18 hours on a train, y'all. I said I did it. It was an experience, and it was perfect because she was with me. Yeah, I don't know. And then spent 2.5 hours in the art gallery and the Art Institute in Chicago. Absolutely stunning, stunning work that you get to see everywhere. Took a nap for sure, and then rocked out to a Glaswegian band called the Snuts. Flew home the next day during the time change. So yeah, it was a busy week. It was a busy week. But Jim, I'm glad you got back home and you've enjoyed the samples. And it was so good to see you. I'm so glad that you were able to come down here. I mean, there's so many folks. Don't be afraid. Call me up. If I can, I will, for sure. But yeah, hey, Jimmy Jazz is in. Hey friend, no worries about being late. We're going kind of slow. I'm going kind of slowly tonight. Little under the weather, got a bit of a bug, but we're gonna get through it all through. Yes, sugar. And that's it's like, Mark, you need to bring me that Andalusia. I forgot to grab it off the table. Absolutely. Andalusia is one of my favorites. And that tells you I'm off my game tonight, y'all. I'm sorry. I left that on the table for sure. But yeah, the Andalusia triple distilled is so delightful. And actually, it is my favorite American single malt. Um, I like the people, but the whiskey is very, very balanced for me. So that one particularly is very good. So, oh, that's great. Brian sent you some triple distilled samples. I'm glad you got to have that. So very, very good. Um, yeah. Point in case, Nova Scotia, that New Scotia up there. Yeah, bless her heart. That's what we'd say. Bless her heart. Yeah, so you get Woodford Reserve, you've got a Canadian Macalonies, you've got Andalusia. Trying to think of the other American single malts that really kind of get into. I think some of them will do some one-offs, that are triple distilled. Um, but yeah, the Andalusia is it's just very good. And I say balanced because um you don't have a lot of first of all, on American single malts, there can be a tendency to have an acetone kind of um flair to them that's very off-putting for my palate. But in they're relatively young whiskeys, probably 4 to 5 years old. Um, the sweetness to malt kind of taste to the wood ratio, I guess, is what I think of when I think of a balanced whiskey. I'm not thinking of one that's, just overpowering in one way or the other. And I think Andalusia does a really super job at that. Hey, prescription bourbon is in. Hello. Cheers to you, friend. Thanks for letting us enjoy your company tonight. Let us know any of your favorite triple distilled elixirs that you have out there. Rob, still haven't had an Andalusia. We may have to figure out a way to take care of that, friend, because it's really, really good. Really good. I was with Gregor, and we were in Austin a couple years ago, and I did a hand pour of their port matured whiskey, and I like a port matured whiskey, but again, I like it balanced. I don't want it to taste like whiskey-fied port. I want it to be whiskey with a port influence, and kind of go from there. Um, yeah, somebody got a little heavy-handed, or didn't quite get rid of the yucky stuff. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. There's one particular single malt out in the out towards the west. Let's just put it that way. That's I think finally coming into their own on that particular flavor profile. They're finally getting that out of there. So, we definitely have some usual suspects when it comes to whiskey, Scotch whiskey. That's that traditionally is triple distilled. But then you have some that just kind of do a couple of one-offs. And Ben Rick is one in particular that will have and just kind of do a triple distilled version. They did a triple distilled of their 3 cask matured, for sure. And the thing is I'm not sure if there's like different labels. It's really hard to find information once you throw the rest of the packaging away. Um, but I know that there is of the 12. I know there's a triple distilled version of this. This is not marked triple distilled, but I feel it has some of the characteristics of having that lighter, kind of fruitier um, component to it for sure. Um, yeah. So let's see. And then there's almost triple distilled, and that would be this bad boy, meaty Mortlock, as I call it, 2.78% mature. I mean, distilled. Is that what we? Yeah, 2.81 distilled. So if you round it up, it would be 3, but not quite. And it's a convoluted. Like you really need to go to the website and kind of study it and pray you're not going to have a pop quiz on it, because it is kind of a convoluted way that they run some through and some others, like some through, I believe, from the wash still to final spirit still, and another one, some of it, the most, all the other to the intermediate, and then so like basically everything that's still in the spirit still doesn't get that second version of it, but it's only percentage, so the 2.8. I don't know. It's kind of crazy, kind of crazy. Um, But yeah, Sugar Kitty, exactly. Those all Octoshan, especially that's the really, I think, one of the biggest. Other than this one, we'll talk about in from Campbelltown. Um, yep, Octoshan. They're pretty much across. I mean, that's their whole game is triple distilled. And they talk about it costing more, it taking more time, it's more process, right? And I guess what I wanted to kind of talk about is like, what do you think the advantages are of that triple distillation? A lot of people tout the S word, that it is so much more smoother. Um, and I think that's an attribute that is up for interpretation depending on who is imbibing. What smooth is to some people, others not so much. So that in particular is interesting to me when you think like what is it doing. So as you go through, and I've got a chart up here that's really pretty interesting from Hazelburn. But when you think about like the chemistry of it, you've got spirit coming out of the wash still. You've got spirit going 3 times. So, and the lightest stuff is what's going, and vapor is going up the line arm into the condenser or warm tubs or whatever you're using, right? So it stands to reason that the spirit itself is going to be a lot lighter, and that those congeners and any other kind of impurities and all these other things, they're just not going to make it all the way up, or only certain types of those are going to make it all the way up. So I don't know. I think it's really pretty interesting to see how to do that. And then and the way that they end up distilling, Alcatution talks about this a lot, that they will distill up to 80%, where most everybody is around the 70s. And then bottling putting it in the cask at a certain percentage. So yeah, interesting on that for sure. um an interesting set of pipes. That is, I'm assuming you're talking about Mortlock, because yeah, it's kind of crazy, for sure. And okay, so Glasgow Distillery. I was wondering if they were doing that as well. Um, I haven't had a lot of that. I had a few uh, tastes of it when I was there last time, but haven't kind of gone down the rabbit hole with them too much. Um, yeah, Andrew Benrenis, they used to do some of the triple distilling as well, but not across the board, huh? I mean, I think it was just like a couple different types of expressions that they were doing triple distilled. I think Ben Rummick even has done some triple distilled. Um, the Balvenie did one, I believe, not too long ago. So it's something to play with. I think I think it's pretty cool that even the big guys would play with that to a certain extent, because it's got to be that they're always stuck in the same thing that they're doing and making the mass quantities of XYZ. And then this way they'd be able to enjoy kind of playing around with some stuff and things like that. Um, hey, Everwind is in. Hey, friend. I hope you're doing well. We took Jim to Drago's. I don't know if you saw Jim Gimradick was up earlier. He was here on Sunday, and we met him in New Orleans for a quick visit. Yeah, it's basic science, right? Some of us did better in chemistry than others. Had my teacher talked about chemistry in the context of a distillery, I probably would have paid a whole lot more attention. But yeah, it would be to purify the alcohol and remove some of the oils and fats, the congeners, and the impurities and things like that. Um, it's interesting to see, because some of those things, when you take something that's triple distilled next to something that's double distilled, it would be interesting to see, say, take prescription bourbon. Hey, friend, again, is a fan of Akatoshan. So if you had like a particular Akatoshan cask maturation, triple distilled, and you put it next to like their American oak, and you put it next to the Balvenie American oak. Um, it's double distilled. Like how what are those characteristics going to be? No doubt, the oxidation is going to be much lighter, perhaps even fruitier. You probably are going to have more of an oily or heavier taste with the Balvenie because of the double distillation. Um, Maybe not the most comparable matchup, just given on age of those two particular ones, but it would be interesting to see what those two are like side by side. Even if it was simple as a bourbon matured, that might be something we need to do. A camp dram on or something like that. But who was it? Was it Rob or Pete that was bringing up the Hazelburn 10? Rob, you were. Hazelburn 10 up against a Springbank 10. Double and a triple. That would be cool to have head to head. That would be very good. Came out of the same distillery, two different variations. That would be very interesting. Yeah. So let's talk Hazelburn. Um, mm-mm-mm. So, okay, prescription bourbon. You said you are a fan of Akatoshi. Um, which ones have you had, and why did you like them? Because I'm assuming you're primarily a bourbon drinker, and if that's the case, I always like to hear, especially for bourbon drinkers, what they like about a particular Scotch, um, because palates are so very different. We all taste things very differently, right? Um, so yeah, I'd love to know that part. Hazelburn, I've got a couple of these. One of which I really would like to do. That's Ron, did I give you a great excuse to go and grab a Springbank 10? I mean, if I can help you out, bud, I'm glad I can help you. That's awesome. Um, let's see. Oh, so Peter says he has one Akatoshin in the bar, an old Dusty Blanche 2011 castrate. Well, that sounds pretty tasty. I have an Akatoshin American Oak somewhere in this house, but after 20 minutes of looking, I still couldn't find it. I have no clue where it is. I've looked in all the places I thought it would be, and it is not there. And I know I have it. I didn't give it away, and I know it hasn't been drunk. So I still don't know where it is. Um, this other particular one, I've been saving this one. I had the 14. This is the 13 Oloroso cask matured of Hazelburn. And let me get in there here. Come on. I don't know my left from my right now. It's the medicine, y'all. So this particular one, an Oloroso and an Oloroso, I think that would be a really particularly fun thing to try and play with. Oh dear, Andrew. So the American Oak didn't go over well. Oh, but you like the 21. um, oh, you've only had two you like. Not That's not a one. That's an I. You've only had two that you liked. I'm sorry. Um, and and not to. I don't want you to go into a bash fest or anything because that's not you either. But was it more of a palate thing? It just like your palate really wants something heartier than a lighter triple distilled spirit, or you just didn't feel like it was well made whiskey. you know I think there's a big difference in that. um so yeah, and um saying that the one that you had was the 12-year sherry finished, and a big, you're a fan of sherry, so that was right in your wheelhouse. So that was in your lane, right? um so you can kind of get that for sure. And you like what you like. Doesn't surprise me that um someone who likes bourbon really likes the sherry. That's the first thing I give somebody who's my friend the other night when we're on the train. And I think we were somewhere close to Memphis, and I'm breaking out the little tiny Glencairns I got from Ardnamurchan. And we were, I mean, the train at this point was kind of like, ugh, this. And we were clinking glasses and drinking scotch. And she's a very much an old fashioned drinker with Bullet or maybe with Woodruff and Maker's Mark. Those are her kind of, that's her jam. So either Bullet Rye or she does Maker's Mark. And she loved the sherry. She really did. The bourbon matured was a little harder for her to embrace. But yeah. Um, so Everwin, um, thanks for this, friend. The difference between the triple distilled versus a column distill affects the batch, allowing for the distiller to really figure out the new make flavor. Column still would create more consistency, but it strips out more, don't you think? I think you still don't have, I think a column still gets really radical with the spirit, um, which is why it's really good for vodka. um, but yeah, I think that still with the pot still, there's I love so I've mentioned this book before. It's called Distilled Knowledge. And I love this one particular instance that they're talking about pot still versus column still. And again, to give full rights to um, Brian Hoffling. Um, but when he talks about the pot stills aren't always efficient, but they produce a smearing effect along the boundaries between the segments. So, like between the segments of the hearts, tails, and the heads, So there's a little overlap. There's smearing going along. There's overlap. So those cuts really, again, to Sugar Kitty's point of the acetone, someone's not paying attention to their cuts. There's some schmear, not not cream cheese on a bagel, but there's that mixing of elements. There's not a cut and dry time period of that to where some of those elements are still there. Whereas in a column still, it is that, and you're done. So I think that's a big reason my profile does not go towards column stilled um, spirits. I've talked before about iron root that is makes corn whiskeys. Whiskeys using corn, but they're in a pot still. And I think they retain some different characteristics that I find very, very tasty. Yeah, very good. Um, so Andrew says that he and a colleague went to a bar and bought each other a scotch and a bourbon, and he liked the scotch that was like a bourbon. You were the opposite. We all like what we like. Absolutely. Yeah. I knew you were. I like it when someone thinks I'm right about something. That's very cool. Dustin, you're not going to take a shot every time I say schmear. That's hilarious. We were just talking about Andalusia, Dustin, which you basically hang out at. They know you by first name. Dustin walks into Andalusia and it's not Norm like on Cheers. It's Dustin because he lives right there. And he gets to go see Ty and all the guys and all the people that make really good whiskey um, over there in Blanco, Texas. I'm so jealous. And we have to figure out something to do that. And I'm going to talk to you about that too, Dustin, because it looks like I'm going to come over this summer for sure. Hey, Molasses is here. Good evening. Good to see you too. So this summer, while while we were over and we did the barley to bottle tour, all that fun stuff. I machine pictures, of course, all over Springbank, and thank goodness they do something like this. So here is here's the explanation of Springbank, aka Hazelburn's triple distilled whiskey. So I love, y'all know I'm a process person, right? Technical writer. I could write this process up in paragraph form, step form, you know, a 1, 2, 3, ABC, the whole deal. So this is just right up my alley. An infographic like this, I absolutely adore. Yes, you could write it up, but pictures really tell you a whole lot, right? And I don't think, well, I know not everyone does it exactly like this, but to get it triple distilled, you pretty much have to um, do it in this sequence. I have seen where instead of the wash coming in to the wash still and then it coming out of the condenser and going straight into low wines for the intermediate, or in this case the first low wines still, that they would put it in the final spirit still, in this case a low wine, second low wines, and then what would come out would then go back in, well, the feints and short foreshots would for sure, would go back into the low wines and back again. So it still kind of had an element of three there. But yeah, so the wash comes out at about 6%, which is interesting because some are 8. So even that percentage, I think, is kind of it's going to be distillery to distillery preference on what that is. Goes into the wash still. I find this so very interesting. And out of the wash still goes through the condenser on this particular one. And then, so you have your low wines in the receiver, about 20 to 25% alcohol at that point, right? So then it goes back up into the charger, getting ready to go into the first, or I would kind of say intermediate, the first of the low wines or the first spirit still. And for Springbank, this is so cool. Instead of going through a condenser again, it goes through a worm tub. I love this part right here, is my favorite little part of this whole thing, of it going through a worm tub. I love that characteristic that it adds to a whiskey so very much. So every distillation it's going up. So from 6% to 2025, from 2025, then now we're at 30 to 35. And um, so you've got the feints going into the charger here, and at that point, you're running that through that last distillation on that spirit still, or what we in a second distillation, you're thinking, okay, your heads and your tails, where you're going to make your cuts on that, then it goes back into that intermediate stage, and goes back through the final still, not back through the first spirit still, if you know what I mean, the first low wine still. So it's running the heads and the tails again with the next charge. So what's coming off here is at 74%, that goes into the cask at 63.5. Even though it's coming off higher off of the spirit still, or the final still of the 3, they're still casking everything at 65, 63.5 rather. I want to see real quick if I can do this, is to go back where, as opposed to Springbank, which is 2.5 times. I forgot about that. And then Long Grow. So let's take a look at Long Grow. So we'll throw that back in there. Okay, so this is long grow. Long grow is double distillation. So again, it's coming out at 6%. It goes through the spirit stills. So the low wines and the faints are combined. So it's coming off at 19 too, at 19 and 20% instead of 25%, like the Hazelburn. Then it goes up into the low wines and faints charger to go into this distillation, or it's actually run through the worm tub for its final spirit distillation. The second or the second one isn't used. They had the condenser. So basically for like Hazelburn, once it went through the warm tub, it would make the cuts there and then go into that. So from 70, what was the other one? This was 71% to long grow at 66. Is that right? Or was that one? That was Springbank. Sorry. 74%. Okay. So 74 for Hazelburn and 66 for long grow. It's a big difference on the spirit percentage coming off the still there. But it's a lot. There's a lot of chemistry there, right? There's a lot there going on, because every time you're adding more distillation, you're adding more heat to it. You've got more vapor to it. The lighter the spirit is going up, and the higher that ABV is going. So yeah. Yes, absolutely. Triple distilling does increase the ABV. Yeah. So yeah, the when you think about the triple distilled, it's not just that. You know, you think about we've talked about Akatoshin, we've talked um there's so if Glasgow's doing it, that's also a lowland. Akatoshin's lowland. Glasgow Distillery is lowland. So another one, Rosebank. Rosebank was historically triple distilled and will, as it's on a reboot, it will also be triple distilled, which is pretty interesting, I think. Um, yeah, pretty cool. Mm. Any other triple distilled that you like, or particular, even a particular Irish that you like at this time, since we're talking about the triple distilled? And do you have a lot of it in your collection, or is it a smattering, kind of like mine? When I look at what I have as far as triple distilled goes, it's only a very few, one of which I can't find, one of which I left on the kitchen table. Um, but when I look at my ratio of Hazelburn to Long Growth to Springbank to Kilkerran like wipes all of them out. But even the long grow, I just do about just a few here and there. The thing about Springbank is that's the most convoluted. I think the 2.5 times distillation. It takes a little while to kind of figure that out with the way it's going through. It's very much like it uses all three of the stills to where, or three still times where um, it's going through the warm tub in that first low wines distillation, right? Um, but the way that they split things off, so they'll put 80% of the faints in and into the spirit still, and then 20% of the low wine. So they kind of split it up. So not everything gets distilled 3 times. Some of it only gets distilled another half. So I think that's interesting. I don't know who came up with that formula or have to figure it out, but we all know what we think about Springbank. We love it. Um, Chris is saying obviously it does cost more to triple distill and should create a light spirit. You're not sure that there's a max ABV it can go into the cask. Um, so Irish triple distilled out of necessity. So as part of what they're saying, oh yeah, because they used the malt, malted and unmalted, and it needed some more. Yeah, because unmalted doesn't have the sugar content to create the alcohol, right? Yeah, very good point. This is why I love this community so much, and especially on a night where I am just not 100% y'all. Thanks for the patience on that because not feeling too great tonight. Um, but yeah, I mean just so malted and unmalted, you've got a lot of grain there that didn't make as much sugar content. Wonder what wonder what that's coming what percentage that's coming off at the mash though. That would be interesting to find out. I'll have to ask Stacy about it because I know she'll know. And by the way, yes, happy St. Patrick's Day this weekend. Go check out Stacy for all things on Four Leaf Whiskey for sure. Um, yeah, so I think I'm going to wrap up, folks, just because I am not not feeling the bestest and bestest. But I'll give you a little bit of an update. We actually will not have a show next Tuesday. However, I reserve the right to do an impromptu show on Wednesday. um, because I will be making the trek. I'll be meeting up with Zach Andrews and Mark JG in Waco, Texas next Wednesday at Balcones. We are attending the SMWS tasting panel with Charlie McLean, and I am ecstatic. I am so very excited about that. So, um, that is going to be amazing. We're going to be able to taste 6 offerings and give our opinion on whether we think they're worthy of a bottling or if they need more work or more time. So that's going to be really cool. And then listen to this man who, I mean, literally wrote the book um, on, all things whiskey. I mean, he's been writing about the whiskey for decades, and I just can't wait to listen to him, pick his brain. So be looking for the unabashedly, unapologetic selfie that will happen with Charlie McLean. That's for sure. Yeah, so I'm stoked about that. So if possible, if we can get some decent Wi-Fi at the hotel, we may do like an impromptu live. I'll put it on socials for sure. It may end up being Zach, and we do a live on Instagram. It kind of depends on what we can get as far as a signal. But we definitely like to share that experience with you. Then the week after that, the 26th, that Tuesday, 2 weeks from tonight, my guest will be Jennifer, hot off her trip. She just returned yesterday from her week at the Springbank School. So we are going to hear all about it. We're going to have some photos and just hear about what that kind of experience was of 5 days working and understanding the whole entire process of how Springbank works. I'm wondering if she actually had a test on the double 2.5 and triple distillation of all the things that they make at Springbank. I'll have to ask her. I know she had an absolutely glorifying time. And so she'll be my guest on the 26th for that for sure. Hey, Michael, good to see you in. So the gal you're working with is named Kathy Jameson, but I haven't had any Jameson in probably 5 to 10 years, and she's not into Scotch. Well, I'd say that's a challenge. Start working on it for sure. I met this summer at talking about the Jameson. It's so funny. I'm at the New York Johnny Walker rep, whose name is Jameson. I'm like, boo, I think you got the wrong version of whiskey with that name. He's an absolute delight. Yeah, super nice guy. But I got a kick out of the fact that his name was Jameson. So anyway, folks, thanks for being in tonight. I appreciate it. Again, enjoy your next Tuesday off. We'll be back maybe on Wednesday. I'll let you know as soon as we can get to as soon as we get to the hotel and we figure out if Wi-Fi will do it or not. We'll kind of figure out what our time frame is with all the festivities, and then shoot out to socials. If you have notifications on the channel selected, you'll get the ping when we go live 30 minutes before and then right when we do. So be sure to do that for sure. Again, y'all, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks, Rob. I'm hoping to feel better. I'm going to go take some more medicine on my water here. And yeah, guys, take care. Have a really great week. And I'm going to see y'all very soon. Slanji, y'all.